Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. Today we're diving into the oldest living religion in the world. But we aren't just looking at ancient history here. We're going to uncover how this millennia-old culture didn't just freeze in time, but actually evolved into a vibrant force that is actively shaping our modern society.
So, here is our roadmap for today. We'll uncover the Saraswati Indus origins, decode the sacred texts and epics, explore their ancient science and math, and finally unpack the core beliefs of Dharma and Karma. Let's get right into it.
Starting with Part 1, the Saraswati Indus origins, truly the cradle of a culture. Over 1 billion. That's a massive number, right? That is how many Hindus are living across roughly 150 different countries today. It's a huge, incredibly diverse population. But to really grasp this global influence and how it got to this point, we need to zoom way, way back to the very beginning. Now, what's really fascinating here is the sheer, staggering age of the Saraswati Indus civilization. We are talking about roots stretching back over 6,000 years. This region was sprawling, literally larger and more advanced than ancient Egypt or Mesopotamia. They had these highly organized cities with populations of up to 80,000 people, which for that era was absolutely huge. But around 2000 BCE, the mighty Saraswati River dried up, and that triggered this massive migration east, essentially scattering these early cultural seeds across the entire continent. So, picture this. It's the 1920s, and archaeologists are finally unearthing these ancient cities. They found an absolute treasure trove of artifacts. I'm talking flat stone seals with writing that we literally still haven't deciphered, intricate jewelry, miniature tools, but they also found something incredibly familiar. They uncovered clay figures posed in traditional lotus yoga postures and statues doing the namaste greeting. Think about that next time you take a yoga class. These artifacts prove that these exact daily traditions have survived for millennia.
Moving on to Section 2, Sacred Texts and Epics, the words that shaped a world.
10,500. That is how many verses make up the 4 Vedas, the central holy books composed in Sanskrit at least 6,000 years ago. But here's the kicker. Originally, they weren't written down at all. They were entirely memorized. Even today, dedicated priests can chant up to 10,500 verses completely from memory. I mean, that is a phenomenal human feat. We're talking up to 50 hours of continuous chanting. It just shows how deeply this knowledge was woven right into their minds and daily lives.
And this brings us to how beautifully diverse their literature is. On one hand, you have the ancient Vedas, which feature ritualistic hymns praising nature while also detailing a really sophisticated economy of agriculture and trade. But then, the literature evolves into these vast, sprawling narrative epics like the Mahabharata. This is literally the world's longest character-driven epic. It tells this dramatic story of cousins fighting a massive war for a throne. And actually, it's right inside this very epic that we get the famous dialogue of the Bhagavad Gita and its enduring message of justice.
All right, let's look at Section 3, Ancient Science and Mathematics, or as I like to call it, the math of the cosmos.
Now here is a crucial point. These folks weren't just sitting around pondering theology. They were absolute scientific pioneers. Between 1000 BCE and the mid-6th century CE, Hindu scholars literally changed the course of human history. They developed the counting system we all use today, and they introduced a revolutionary concept, zero. By bringing zero and decimals into the equation, these ancient mathematicians laid the very foundation for modern math. Simply put, without this ancient leap, the digital technology we rely on today wouldn't exist, period.
But it wasn't just numbers on a page, you know? Their practical engineering and metallurgy were equally mind-blowing. Ancient India was the world's foremost supplier of steel. In 400 CE, their foundries created this massive iron pillar that is still standing today. And the craziest part? It has never rusted. Just let that sink in for a second. A 1,600-year-old iron structure, exposed to the elements, completely rust-free. It's a marvel that modern science still struggles to perfectly replicate.
And beyond math and metal, their astronomers were mapping the cosmos long before the telescope was even a thought. They discovered the Earth actively orbits the Sun and calculated a solar year with stunning precision. Plus, their medical knowledge was so incredibly advanced that doctors were performing complex surgeries centuries ahead of Europe. In fact, Europe wouldn't match these medical feats until the 18th century.
Which brings us to our 4th and final section, core beliefs, Dharma and Karma. The spiritual compass connecting it all.
At the very center of Hindu belief is the supreme God, worshipped in many different male and female forms, and this massive, unifying concept called Dharma. Dharma is incredibly expansive. It's basically the righteous duty that upholds the entire universe. It encompasses truth, sacred law, ethics, justice, and the very laws of nature. It acts as this ultimate guide for living in harmony with the world around us.
Now, woven right into the fabric of Dharma is ahimsa, the principle of strict nonviolence. But this isn't just some abstract philosophical idea, it's a profound, active way of living. What's incredible is how this ancient concept leaped right out of the texts and landed directly in the center of the 20th century's most vital civil rights movements.
You've probably heard Mahatma Gandhi's famous quote, "Nonviolence is the greatest force at the disposal of mankind." Well, he harnessed this exact ancient principle of ahimsa to successfully lead India to independence in 1947 through peaceful protests, strikes, and boycotts. And that created a global ripple effect. Gandhi's methods directly inspired leaders like Martin Luther King Jr. in America, Cesar Chavez, and Nelson Mandela in South Africa to fight for freedom and equality using that exact same nonviolent blueprint.
Right alongside Dharma is a concept I know you're familiar with: karma. This is the universal law of cause and effect. It's the deep-seated belief that any action you take, good or bad, will eventually return to you either in this life or a future one. It's essentially the cosmic rule that what goes around comes around, continuously reinforcing why it's so important to live an ethical life.
And notice how these concepts interlock. Karma actively drives the cycle of reincarnation. The soul, or Atman, is repeatedly reborn in a new body. The ultimate goal here is to learn, grow, and mature through all the diverse experiences that human life has to offer. Eventually, through this long process of spiritual evolution, the soul achieves salvation, fully realizing its oneness with the divine and is no longer reborn.
So, bringing it all together, it leaves us with this really fascinating final thought. Just how much of our modern life actually relies on this ancient wisdom. From the mathematical zero that acts as the very foundation of our computer code, to the nonviolent protests that shaped our modern civil rights. The 6,000-year-old civilization continues to guide and influence us today in ways we rarely stop to think about. It really leaves you wondering, what other ancient wisdom are we finally ready to rediscover?